G'day everyone and welcome to today's video. In today's video we're going to be looking at Halo Reach, but notably some things you may not have known about the game's lore and gameplay whilst playing through the game. Presently this will be one video in a small series where I'll look at different game aspects that allude to or represent different forms of racism within sci-fi video games. But before we begin, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button as it will really help out my channel a lot. So yeah, let's begin, shall we? Halo Reach. The game that provides players with any excuse to bracingly defend humanity by slaughtering endless hordes of enemies all in the name of freedom. I remember the first time my 12-year-old self got my hands on a copy of the game, not knowing what multiplayer was, and immediately booting up the campaign. There was something about character design and gameplay that instantly resonated within my prepubescent self. The idea of totally The idea of being a totally overpowered tank of a human that exterminates the enemies of humanity in the name of freedom was awesome. Of course, I was oblivious to the fact of why exactly I'm doing anything other than popping the skulls of my enemies in a cool sci-fi game, but I didn't care. I just enjoyed playing the game, blissfully unaware of the actual pretenses of the game's story, like the fact that the enemy faction in the game known as the Covenant are actively destroying one of the most significant planets known to humanity, basically just because they're jealous of us and they don't like us and we're awesome and yeah, that stuff. But that's what we are here to discuss today. No, not the extermination of humanity's enemies because we don't like them. Well, that's a whole can of worms I'm not getting into today. Warhammer.
I will see the galaxy freed once more.
The idea of how games represent discrimination or racism. This could be through things like the game's narrative or gameplay. Like, for example, Halo Reach has the Hidden Skulls feature that lets you customize the game's difficulty by making it more challenging or enjoyable. That is, if you enjoy watching an innocent grunt have a little confetti party burst out of his skull, but surely that isn't racist, right? Well, I mean, to an extent, no, it is not. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's definitely discriminatory letting a player have a laugh when suffering for another race. However, one thing that the game doesn't detail is the hierarchy of the Covenant. Just as a short summary, the Covenant in Halo Reach is a hierarchical society comprised of a variety of different species, each with their own social statuses. If I butcher any of these names, I apologize in advance, but going from most powerful to least powerful, we have the Sunshayum, known as the Prophets, the Sangheili, known as the Elites, the Jirolhaini, and the, oh my god, this one's AIDS, the Megalagola, the Mekgolo, I guess, known as the Hunters, the Kig-Yar, known as the Jackals, and the Ungoi, known as the Grunts. Using a systemic racial lens, it is clear to suggest that yeah, something might be off with this game's lore, and that's why I am here, because, well, Anyways, today I'll be looking at the most depressing and poor society within the Covenant, the Ungoi Grunts. Yup, if Bungie allowing us to absolutely decimate the craniums of Grunts wasn't enough, they even had the audacity to give them their own canonical rebellions. And yes, I'm making it sound bad, but rebellions are okay, right? Maybe, well, I guess. But the fact is they've had at least 15 rebellions that have all failed, and every single time the Grunts have remained at the bottom of their society, lacking in any form of military unit in the years prior to the Human Covenant War that is seen within the canon of the Halo games, and specifically Halo Reach. Being the only race forced into the Covenant, the Ungois were represented as expendable muscle due to their high fertility rate, meaning they were essentially useless meat shields that wielded guns that would just poke the player from a distance in gameplay, while the player is just simultaneously absolutely taking names. Anyways, roughly 60 years before the Human Covenant War and a lot of beef with the Jackals, the Grunts, well, had had enough. You see, the Jackals had been represented as the lowest tier of the Covenant society prior to the introduction of the Grunts. One important thing to note is that the Covenant races all lived within a massive holy city known as High Charity. Both the Grunts and Jackals shared restaurants. Anyway, This would severely impact fertility rates for the jackals as well. Some cheeky sabotage later, and all of a sudden, bang, the grunts had decided they had enough and rebelled against the Covenant. It was due to the grunts' large population that they actually did significant damage to High Charity, stealing weapons and trying to punish any Covenant race that had wronged them in the past. Higher members of the Covenant, such as the Elites and the Prophets, were so desperate to quell the rebellion that they had to elect a de facto religious member from the Elites known as the Arbiter, anyway, just to stop the grunts. However, being the badass samurai-inspired race they are, the Elites would award the grunts the mercy of being able to serve alongside them in battle with weapons and their ferocity. So you see, everyone wins. The grunts got more riots, the player still gets to wipe out hordes of grunts knowing they will reproduce in like 5 seconds, so everything worked out right. Well, I mean, the jackals are still fucked, but we don't talk about that. That's a whole nother story for another time. There's one thing to take away from this video, it's that racism and discrimination can be embedded in things you might not realize. Just be thankful that the grunts didn't exist in the Warhammer 40k universe, because they would have lasted about 5 seconds.